All right, I'd like to welcome our guest this hour, criminal defense attorney Colleen Kelley. Colleen, great to see you, my friend. Colleen, we're dealing with a case here involving these two men here that are married, and they partook in somewhat of a non-traditional lifestyle, having their relationship open to others who they found online, who were down to partake. Now, the cornerstone of the defense's theory here is this secondary apartment where Tim Smith was found. This apartment being where they would have these sex parties with all different individuals from all these different walks of life. Their theory is that Tim could have been killed by any of these people, but not the defendant here. What is your main takeaway from this so far?
Hi, Cody. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm wondering the same thing. And while I see the defense parading out potential alternate suspects, what they're not giving us is a motive. They had the witness that connected with Tim Smith over Grindr, but it doesn't sound like they ever met up. And none of these people that they're bringing forward really had any motivation to kill him like the defendant did.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback, about this apartment, because that's all that really the defense is bringing forward here. It was reported that when they got there, leather bondage straps and all that was found on the bed and whatever else, all those different objects. With the nature of their sexual relationship and the possible extreme activities that they may have had going on in this home, is there a world that exists or a viable defense that exists that suggests something accidental, maybe erotic asphyxiation or something like that, as a viable defense?
Sure, I think that's possible, and I think that's why they're bringing it out. They think that it's a good defense. And again, while no one really had any motivation, anyone could have been there at any time. I think what's interesting is we're missing any trail of someone else actually having been there. If someone was there, and maybe they had been there previously and had kind of come back and it was not planned, but that part is, again, the missing link. But I think it also lends credibility where the neighbor is hearing screaming, and that kind of goes against the prosecution's theory that he was drugged before he was killed. That really lends itself to more of a violent encounter, an assault that did occur in the apartment.
Colleen Kelley, we always appreciate your insight, but we have to squeeze in a little break here. You're going to be sticking around for the rest of this hour. But folks, before we go to break, an update on another case we're following here at Court TV, the End Her Suffering murder case of Utah nurse Megan Sundwall. Now, the nurse was in court today for a bond hearing. Prosecutors say the nurse convinced 38-year-old Casey Terry that she had terminal cancer and killed her with a lethal dose of insulin. Investigators say Sundwall believed she was the beneficiary of Terry's rumored $1.5 million life insurance policy. Folks, it's a fascinating case. And coming up at 6 p.m. with Court TV anchor Michael Ayala will bring you an update on that Sundwall bond hearing. All right, we got to squeeze in that break now, but coming up, more testimony in the dosed and choked murder trial of Herbert Swilly.
Young mother found brutally murdered.
Now the victim's boyfriend, a married father of 4,
is charged for the murder of his alleged mistress and her unborn child.
The pregnant mistress murder trial. Live coverage today, only on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the ex-boyfriend of Wendy Adelson and the explosive police interview. What he told police and what could be next in the Adelson saga.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV. We're bringing you testimony out of Florida, where the dosed and choked murder trial remains underway. Now, prosecutors claim that the defendant, Herbert Swilly, drugged and strangled his husband and then staged a fake crime scene back in 2023. And right now, we're hearing from a neighbor of that secondary apartment owned by the two men where the victim was found. Let's go back inside for more.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Would you tell us your name, please?
My name's Danielle Velez.
How do you spell your last name?
V as in Victor, E-L-E-Z.
And where do you currently live?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Where do you currently live? You live in Ocala?
Yes, sir, I do.
How long have you lived in Ocala?
About 12 years now.
All right. And did there come a point in time back in March of 2023 when you were living in a quadruplex
Yes.
in Ocala?
Yes, sir.
What was the address of that?
It was in Delta.
Unit D. So if I'm looking at that quadruplex from the road, the address road, 40th Street Road, would you have been in the back right unit of that quadruplex?
No, sir. If you're looking at the building, I would have been in the back left.
I see. Okay. So right behind Unit C.
Correct.
All right. And do you recall in late March of 2023 there being heavy police activity at that quadruplex?
Yes.
All right. And did you learn that a body had been discovered there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you speak to law enforcement regarding their investigation of that matter?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did you know the individuals that at the time of that incident and right before it that were utilizing Unit C of that quadruplex?
I had a contact with them, one more than the other.
Okay. Which one more than the other?
I didn't really have any conversations with Mr. Smith, although I did Mr. Sweeley.
Okay. So would you come across them from time to time just in the course of your daily routine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you know if either of those men were living at that apartment?
No, sir. To my knowledge, nobody lived there permanently.
Okay. What was your understanding while that apartment was being used by Mr. Smith and Mr. Sawilli, what they were using it for?
My understanding was it was just a place to go outside of their normal home.
All right. And did you notice people other than Mr. Smith and Mr. Sawilli coming to that apartment, visiting that apartment?
Yes, sir. There were many vehicles throughout the time that they had the residence.
How would you describe the level of vehicle traffic, people coming and going from that particular apartment while it was being used by Mr. Smith and Mr. Sawilli?
It was usually at night that there would be a vehicle that I recognized as one of theirs, as well as a vehicle that was unknown to the building a few times a week, sometimes more.
All right. And do you recall what time of night you observed these vehicles?
It would have to be before I was gone to bed, maybe if I was outside for the last time for the night, and I would see the vehicle, and then by the time I got up in the morning, neither vehicle would be there.
So the last time that you would know, would you go outside to smoke?
Yes, sir.
So normally around that time, if you can recall, what would be the last time during the work week that you would go outside to smoke before you go to bed?
Maybe 9 p.m.
All right. And I know we're going back a ways in time, but
Yes, sir.
March 23rd of 2023, you were still living in Unit D of that quadruplex at that time?
I was, yes, sir.
And do you remember going out that evening to have a smoke?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember the white Jeep that you believe belonging to Mr. Smith being parked outside that night?
No, sir, I don't recall the Jeep that evening.
Okay, all right. When do you recall the Jeep being there?
When I got up to go to work one morning, I can't tell you if that was on the 23rd, but I do remember waking up to leave for work, and the Jeep was there, and I thought that was odd because it's usually not there overnight like that.
Understood. Your Honor, may I have 1 moment?
Sure.
Thank you. When you were living in Unit D of that quadruplex, before the incident that led to you being here today, back in 2023, did you have any children living with you at the time?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And did you have any concern about your kids based on the activity that was going on next door?
Objection relevance, Judge.
That's sustained.
Okay. I'll move on. Do you recall seeing an individual running from Unit C near the time that this incident is alleged to have occurred?
No, sir. I don't remember seeing anyone running.
Okay. I tend to the witness, Judge.
Cross-examination, please.
No, Your Honor, I don't have any questions for this witness.
She is excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a nice day, ma'am. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Your Honor, the defense rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to step out for another little bit, and then we'll have you come back in a few minutes.
Stand up.
All right. It's my understanding the defense has rested. Mr. Swilley,
Yes,
I just want to confer with you briefly. I take it you've made a decision to not testify?
yes, sir.
Did you discuss with that decision with your attorneys?
Yes, I did.
Did you make that decision of your own free will?
Yes, I did.
Nobody forced you to make that decision?
No, sir.
And you're comfortable with the decision you made?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else from the defense?
Your Honor, at this time, having now rested the defense's case in chief, I would renew the defendant's motion for judgment of acquittal, same argument and grounds as previously made.
Okay. Any response by the state?
I'll rely on my previous argument, Your Honor.
All right. What I'm going to do is, having reweighed testimony, I'll find that the evidence in the light most favorable to the state, that's the standard to review at this stage of the trial. I'll find that the motion for judgment of acquittal will be denied, that the evidence in the light most favorable to the state would sustain a verdict on all three elements of murder in the first degree. So I'll find that the state could, in the light most favorable to the state, prove all three elements of the murder in the first degree, so I'll deny the motion for judgment of acquittal. So where are we going from here? Can you do closings today?
All right, let me bring back in criminal defense attorney Colleen Kelley. Colleen, Swilly choosing not to testify. Just want to get your thoughts. Good move, bad move. He's claiming he's not guilty, yet he doesn't want to explain why he's not guilty. What are your thoughts?
Well, I always think that's a mistake. All a jury wants to hear is, I didn't do it. That's what they're waiting for. And yes, there's the presumption of innocence. And yes, defense attorneys advise clients in many circumstances not to testify. In my experience, it's because A, my client can't say he didn't do it. B, is going to say something that makes him seem guilty. And those are the only reasons I don't put on a client to testify in their own defense, because that is, again, the single thing a jury wants to hear.
Right. And Colleen, as I was reading up on this case and watching some of the testimony, it seems like it's based a lot on some circumstantials. Even though the circumstances do align, it's still circumstantial evidence, meaning naturally there are going to be conclusions made by the jury that are going to be naturally jumped to, conclusions to be jumped to by the jury. Take us to law school for a second. As a defense attorney, how would you pick apart this circumstantial case?
Well, they presented motive, they presented opportunity, but they don't have direct evidence. They don't have, eyewitnesses. They don't have all of those direct evidence links to the defendant that make it a slam dunk or open and shut case, whatever you want to call it. So the jury instruction gets the jury instruction on circumstantial evidence is essentially, if it looks like this, it probably is this, and you can consider that with essentially the weight that you want to give it.
Absolutely. Colleen, always appreciate your insight. You are sticking around for the remainder of this hour, but folks, we got to squeeze in a break. Coming up, the defense has rested, but we're going to listen back to testimony from the medical examiner in the dosed and choked murder trial of Herbert Swilly. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Cody Thomas, back now to Florida for the dosed and choked murder trial for Herbert Swilly. The 57-year-old is accused of killing his husband, Tim Smith, and then staging his murder as a sexual encounter gone wrong. Prosecutors say Swilly moved Smith's body to an apartment they used for sexual encounters with other men, then poured bleach around the body. Now, the defense has rested and closing are set to begin tomorrow morning. So let's get you caught up on some key testimony. This morning, jurors heard from the medical examiner. Let's take a look.
And does the medical examiner's office routinely rely on results from the NMS laboratory?
Yes.
And what sort of test did you order from NMS laboratory?
For Mr. Smith's case, I ordered what is called an expanded toxicology panel, where in most cases, we order a basic panel where we're looking for the presence of alcohol or other drugs, illicit drugs, prescription narcotics, cocaine, fentanyl, things like that. But in this case, I ordered what's called an expanded panel that also looks for over-the-counter medicines, common over-the-counter medicines, and common prescription drugs.
Does it routinely take up to 6 weeks to get the toxicology results back?
Yes, ma'am, especially if you order an expanded panel.
So you would have completed the autopsy portion by the time you received the toxicology report back?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And I want to talk first about the toxicology results, even though you got those later. What were the results of the toxicology on Tim Smith's blood?
Mr. Smith, at the time of his death, had both acetaminophen, that's Tylenol, in his bloodstream, and also diphenhydramine. That's the common trade name for diphenhydramine is Benadryl. Those were the only two substances found.
All right, what was the level of the diphenhydramine?
The diphenhydramine concentration was measured at 2,000 nanograms per milliliter.
All right, and what about the acetaminophen?
The acetaminophen was measured at 16 micrograms per milliliter.
All right. Now you said acetaminophen is Tylenol?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is there any significance to the fact that there was Tylenol or acetaminophen in his blood?
It just means he took a Tylenol, and it was at a therapeutic level.
All right, so a normal level of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that diphenhydramine is commonly known as Benadryl?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are there other medications that's found, over-the-counter medicines that would be found in, like, say, Tylenol PM, something like that?
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes, I mean, it depends on what you get, but you have to always read the label. But Tylenol PM might have diphenhydramine in it, and it might have another substance called doxylamine in it, which is also a sleep aid over the counter.
Is diphenhydramine rapidly absorbed if taken orally?
It certainly can be. It's somewhat dependent on what else you might have in your stomach.
All right. And what are the effects of diphenhydramine on the body?
Well, diphenhydramine is used by a lot of people as an over-the-counter sleep medication, and it's also used to tamp down allergy symptoms such as itchy, watery eyes, runny nose, things like that.
So it would make you tired?
It can, yes.
All right.
That's why people take it.
All right. Now, what would be the highest level of diphenhydramine in the blood based on a therapeutic dose?
Well, I don't know what the highest therapeutic dose would be, but according to the literature, basically, if somebody has taken a normal dose of Benadryl or diphenhydramine to induce sleep, the level will be somewhere around 60 to 70 nanograms per mil.
Right. And that's taken a normal dose?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, you said that Tim Smith's dose was 2,000?
That's correct.
All right. Would you expect Tim Smith to be awake with a level of 2,000 nanograms per milliliter of diphenhydramine?
I would think that he would be asleep or at least very, very drowsy or groggy.
Would you expect him to be able to drive a car?
He might try, but it wouldn't be recommended.
And now you said that the comprehensive panel that you ordered tests for many different drugs, illegal and legal drugs.
Yes, over-the-counter and prescription common drugs,
Right.
yes.
Did that panel test for an erectile dysfunction drug called tadalafil?
Yes, and that is also used for what's called benign nodular hyperplasia of the prostate. Having a big prostate, it can be used for that as well.
As well as erectile dysfunction?
Yes.
All right. Was tadalafil found in Tim's blood panel?
No.
Does the comprehensive panel test for duloxetine, which is found in the brand name Cymbalta?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was duloxetine found in Tim's blood?
There was no duloxetine detected.
Okay. All right. And that was the results of the toxicology?
Yes, there were the two substances found, the acetaminophen and the diphenhydramine. Those were the only two substances.
All right, now I want to move on to the external examination that you did on Tim Smith's body. Would photographs help explain your findings?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as States Exhibit TTT. You can look at those and tell me if you recognize those.
All right, the medical examiner going through that toxicology report, 2,000 nanograms per milliliter of over-the-counter sleep medicine, a normal level being 60 to 70 nanograms per milliliter. That's a lot. So coming up, we got to squeeze in a break right here. More testimony in the dosed and choked murder trial of Herbert Swilley coming up right after this break on the other side.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the ex-boyfriend of Wendy Adelson and the explosive police interview. What he told police and what could be next in the Adelson saga.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Join me for a Court TV true crime series.
I've never seen anything like this.
This was a whole different level.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. Season premieres September 27th.
Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Back now to the dosed and choked murder trial for defendant Herbert Swilley. Swilley was arrested back in 2023 for the murder of his husband, 59-year-old Timothy Smith. Now, prosecutors say Swilley dosed Smith with sleeping pills and strangled him to death. They say he then moved Smith's body to an apartment they used for sexual encounters with other men in an attempt to cover up the crime. Now, the defense is rested this afternoon and closing arguments are expected to begin tomorrow morning. But let's get you caught up on more key testimony, picking things right back up with the medical examiner on the stand from earlier this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the way Tim Smith's body looked during your autopsy?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time we've moved State's Exhibit TTT into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
The objection will be in witness number 72.
And Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, do you take general overall photographs before you begin the autopsy?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm showing you photograph number 1 of State's 72.
Hold on. Do you want the outside one on?
I'm sorry?
Do you want the exterior monitor on?
Yeah, that's fine, Judge.
Okay. Please make sure no one crowds around the door. Or also, nobody has cameras out at all right now. Absolutely not.
Can you tell us what we're looking at in photograph number 1?
This is Mr. Smith's body as it was received at the medical examiner's office. You can see that he is laying on a sheet within a blue body bag.
And what is the green that we see? I'm losing the pointer, doesn't want to work. The green right here.
The green over the abdomen, that is just decomposition. He was in an early stage of decomposition, so that isn't an injury. That's just where we all have bacteria in our colon, in our large intestine, that help us digest our food. But after you die, if your body is not refrigerated, those bacteria begin to produce colored compounds and gases. And so this is just evidence of early decomposition.
And then that's the medical examiner's case number in the bottom left-hand side?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And now I want to talk about an injury to the left eye. I'm showing you photograph number 2. What can you tell us about that injury?
Well, basically, this is referred to as a blunt force injury. Around Mr. Smith's eye, you can see that he has what's called ecchymosis, which is basically blood underneath the skin. Around the eye itself, particularly on both the upper lid and the lower lid to the side over here. And then along the lower lid, you can also see a smaller horizontally oriented darker area, and that's basically a superficial abrasion where the top layers of the skin are off, and that's a blunt force injury as well.
And you're talking about this right here?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I think 3, is that just a closer up picture?
Yes, ma'am.
And now I want to move on to the right eye injury. I'm showing you photograph number 4, which is first a further away view, and then I want to move on to 5. Can you tell us about the injury to the right eye?
Well, on Mr. Smith's right eye area, mainly up along the very side of his eyebrow, you can see what looks like some swelling, which it was, as well as little red and blue dots. And again, this is a blunt force injury, basically a bruise with some swelling to the right eye area, right at the brow ridge there.
Right here?
Yes,
ma'am. What is
ma'am.
a blunt force injury?
Well, basically, as a forensic pathologist, I break injuries down into either blunt force or sharp force. Blunt force is caused by impact to the skin or an organ with a blunt object. It could be the ground because you fall. It could be a fist. It could be anything that doesn't have a sharp edge. We just differentiate between blunt force and sharp force. Sharp force injuries are things like cutting injuries and stabbings.
Are you able to tell what object caused these blunt force injuries on Mr. Smith's face?
No, ma'am. Specifically, the one to the eyebrow here is located over a bony prominence, so that could come from contact with any, say, broad, flat surface, like the ground even.
I want to talk about the neck injury, and this is photograph number 6 of State's 72. And I'm going to show photograph 7, which is a closer picture. What are we looking at here?
This is what is referred to as a ligature furrow, and basically what this is consistent with is Mr. Smith having had something around his neck with some pressure on it to cause that indentation and that discoloration. This ligature furrow began on the right side, right below the angle of the mandible, right below the angle of his jawbone. It goes across his neck, and then it went to the left side over to what's called the mastoid process, which is that bump that you can feel behind your ear. It measured a 1/2 inch in width, and is going all the way across the neck. As you see, it measured 11.5 inches in length.
Can you tell anything? Is this a clear and defined mark on his neck?
Very.
Okay. Does that tell you anything about what causes or how long it was on his neck?
Well, in general, for most ligatures, the longer they are around the neck, even in the post-mortem state, after the person has died, the more well-defined they become. If somebody hangs themselves and they're found right away and the ligature is removed, a lot of times we can barely see anything on the neck when we have to go by historical information. When I see a ligature furrow this well defined, it is usually associated with the ligature having been on for a period of time.
Okay.
But in addition to the period of time that might have been involved, I think that there might have been an element of a chemical reaction as well.
Okay, why do you say that?
Mr. Smith's body, even when I received it at the autopsy, smelled very, very strongly of bleach. And I think that many of the marks that I saw on his body were caused by drying of the skin due to the presence of bleach. If bleach had been poured on him while the ligature was on and then sat there for a while, that might explain why this mark is so prominent and so dark.
Thank you. And can you tell us what made that mark?
Something about that width, and that's obviously flexible because it's going around the neck.
I want to show you a photograph number 30 from States 5. There's a rope right here. Can you say anything about whether that rope caused the injury to the neck?
No.
Okay. All right. Now I want to talk about what you've indicated, some petechiae. Is it petechiae?
Petechiae, yes ma'am.
On the face. And I'm showing you photograph number 8. What is petechiae and where is it on
Okay, petechial hemorrhages or petechiae are just places where capillaries have popped. The smallest blood vessels in your body are called capillaries, and they're the interface between the arterial side of your blood system and the venous side. And that's where the capillaries is where oxygen exchange actually takes place. So you're covered, we're all covered in capillaries everywhere. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. If for some reason they get overfilled or there's a disease process that affects the integrity of the wall of the capillary, they pop. And every place they pop, we see a tiny pinpoint hemorrhage. So for me as a pathologist, I'm not only looking to see whether petechiae are present or absent, I'm looking to see what their pattern is.
Okay. I'm going to show you photograph number 9 a little closer up. Where's the petechiae on his face in this picture?
Well, you can see petechiae both on his cheek there.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am. All those little red dots, those are petechiae. And you can also see them up on his forehead and around that injury to his right eyebrow there. Yeah, those are, excuse me, those are more petechiae. Okay. Yes.
All right, the medical examiner going through a lot. Blunt force injury, strangled with ligature marks. Now again, remember to our viewers, the defense has rested their case. Swilley said he will not be testifying, and we are expecting closing arguments tomorrow. Still with us this hour, criminal defense attorney Colleen Kelley. Colleen, I just want to get your general thoughts on this medical examiner's testimony. I mean, we heard her talk about the toxicology of that over-the-counter sleep medicine over 30 times on normal therapeutic amount, ligature marks, the body smelled of bleach. What are you making of her testimony?
Well, I think the testimony about the ligature marks and the blunt force trauma is particularly interesting, and that's helpful to the prosecution. Essentially, the alternate theory from the defense is that maybe one of these random stranger sexual encounters somehow resulted in potentially an accidental death. We know the couple had essentially a sex playroom, and perhaps they were engaging in some sort of asphyxiation. But I think what the forensic examiner is going to present is that this wasn't a little bit of strangulation that somehow resulted in an accidental death. This was violent. It caused, I think, a cervical fracture and some other injuries, including the blunt force trauma that she was just describing. So really lending to the theory that this was a homicide, this was a murder, this was violent, it wasn't accidental.
And Colleen, you spoke about earlier in the hour about motive. And when I see things like blunt force trauma, specifically strangulation, that sounds like somebody really wanted to get close to you. And really, it's not just like you walk in and shoot somebody in the room. So I don't know. It's not looking good for Mr. Swilley here, but I want to give you major thanks, Colleen Kelley, for joining us today. Always appreciate your insight. Up next, folks, we'll head to our other trial out of Florida, where closing arguments are set to begin tomorrow in the pregnant mistress murder trial. A recap of some of the biggest moments from court there after the break. Stay with us.